Hi, welcome to the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. I'm Dr. Sarah Gordon. I'm recording a little bit late tonight. Just got back from the pool, hoping it'll be quiet so I can get through this recording tonight for you. Um, yeah, I'm excited to be here. As I mentioned in episode 22, going at this alone for a little while. And I talked about kind of my journey and how the vision for the podcast and a little bit about my background. So if you're coming to this podcast for the first time, I encourage you to listen to episode 22. You'll learn a little bit about me because tonight I'm just going to kind of jump in. What I did explain in the last episode is that while I was working on my doctorate degree, I wrote poetry. And every year I kind of had this parallel journey over the course of the PhD program where I wrote poetry. So I'm going to read tonight two poems actually that I published. Let's see, in episode 22, I read a poem that I wrote in 2022. And then in 2023, I had two poems published that I'm going to read tonight. And when I think about them and what they mean to me and why I'm sharing them with you, I think it shows kind of the mental toll of the PhD journey and then the power of physical activity and balancing play and hobbies within that journey. So just for your mental health and your physical health. So I'm going to start in 2023. I was published again in Delaware Bards and with a collection of poets. And I wrote a poem actually called The Deep Thinker. Now, it's interesting because one of my sons always said to me, Mom, having a podcast is the best platform for you because I tend to be a deep thinker. And I've given myself the nickname Saristotle. Like Aristotle, but with Sarah. So I'm not going to apologize anymore for being a deep thinker. Um, and I'm going to share this poem with you and see what you think. And I do apologize. I have two dogs and a cat, a little Jack Russell named Louie, a chocolate lab named Macy, and a sweet little rescue cat named Willie. And they have decided to play in the background. So listen, this is real. I'm unplugged. And if you hear them, then you realize I'm an animal lover too. Okay. So I'm going to start tonight, and I am going to read you a poem. It's called The Deep Thinker. And I'm going to go slow. It's kind of a long poem. And let you think about it and see if you can kind of get into maybe what it feels like to be a deep thinker, to go through life and process life on a different level. I don't know if you're that type of person where things you just perceive things on a deeper level. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to go through life um, when you're very introspective. Okay, so here we go. The deep thinker. For in a moment of victorious accomplishment, an expectation of fulfillment surrounds you, and yet you feel empty. For in a moment of joyful celebration, an expectation of happiness enfolds you, and yet you feel empty. What is missing that the soul yearns to find in these beautiful moments of life where satisfaction should be complete? A search for a deeper existence, a connection the world cannot provide, is the plight of the deep thinker. To carry throughout one's life, to anchor somewhere different amongst other courageous souls who walked a different path in self inflicted hardship, in search of meaning and craft, and passions of the heart for those who dare to dream. Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, Beethoven, Chopin, Mozart, Michelangelo, Picasso, Van Gogh, magnificent thinkers and creators, vulnerable souls who bared it all. For consequences left unknown, feeling misplaced in the midst of it all, and yet an inner calling to find a different place in the trivialness of the world that daily life could never replace. No ordinary talk or inconsequential action, the satire and tragedy of the deep thinker who takes the different road where others seldom go to express their feelings and passion in a judging world with expectations of its own. Consumed with busyness, with no movement forward, the deep thinker sits in solitude, loneliness often chosen on their own, to think and create originally, move forward in a different way, in a world that hardly notices, nor who waits for what they say, until perhaps they are gone. In retrospection, you learn their name. The deep thinker sits alone until they meet another soul who sees life in the same way, where they challenge each other in delightful debate and anchor someplace together beneath the open sky and the stars, and a feeling they long to stay in, to create deeply and create, to think deeply and create until the sun rises a new day with expectations that surround and accomplishments viewed as great. The deep thinker retreats once more, anchoring someplace different, continuing to feel misplaced. And I wrote this one in 2023, and I think about, maybe what was going on in my mind when I wrote this one. It's kind of a serious poem, but it kind of gives you an idea of when you getting a PhD, right? A PhD is a doctorate of philosophy. There should be no excuse or apology for being a deep thinker. You're getting a doctorate in being a philosopher. And so, you know, I think that's what this poem is trying to say to people in this world. If you slow down a little bit and you try to understand life on a deeper level, sometimes there's challenges. Sometimes it's a little bit hard. Sometimes you don't necessarily understand, why people are acting a certain way or why things aren't going a certain way. And so it's just it's a blessing to be a deep thinker, but it also sometimes makes life a little bit more challenging. So we wanted to share that with you. I don't know if you're the type of person who goes through life and kind of has empathy or compassion and feels things on a deeper level. And if you do, I'm here to tell you I do too. On the PhD journey, was really an outlet for me to explore kind of that side of my personality that does in some way like to be a philosopher. So that's the first one I wanted to share tonight. The second one I wrote again in 2023. It was a project. It was called Bards Against Hunger, where the proceeds went to different charities to help, with hunger that were in different cities within the United States. And this was an anthology of national and international poets. And I felt really grateful to be included in this publication. There were hundreds of poets in this publication. And yeah, it was incredible. I'm looking to see it was a 10-year celebration and had over 200 poets from around the world. So I felt very blessed to be in this pu- publication. Now, this was much different. Let me just find where I'm at in this book. Let's see here. And all these books actually, I don't get any proceeds from these books. Actually, the publisher, which is Local Gems, probably does, and they probably give a certain amount of proceeds to the charities that they're representing. But I was just fortunate enough to be published in them. So this one's very different than The Deep Thinker. This one's called The Ocean is Calling. And I remember this day. I remember being out. I live near the beach, and I went out in the middle of the day and went for a swim in the ocean. And I talked about in episode 22 about how to balance the intensity of life with physical activity, with play, with hobbies, with nature walks, with things that balance your mind and bring some more joy and some peace to balance out the intensity of perhaps your workload or a PhD, if you're going for a PhD or you're in medical school, wherever, excuse me, just kicked a trash can, but wherever you are, you have to have some type of balance in your life. For me, I love nature and actually I love open water swimming. And I remember this day, it was beautiful out on the ocean, and I went to swim with some friends. And I wrote this little poem called The Ocean is Calling. The ocean is calling on this hot summer day, my heart filled with excitement, opportunities to play. The sky is vivid blue with elegant white clouds, waves hitting the shoreline, creating a stirring sound. Excuse me 1 second. Something popped up on my screen. It's a perfect day in almost every single way. Time spent enjoying and relaxing, a day just slipping away. How is it possible to stay in such bliss for so long and to somehow memorize it all like a beautiful love song? Should I be content for this one day in time and learn from its magic to help others begin to shine? The ocean is calling on this hot summer day as I walk towards it slowly in my own unique way, making joyful memories, living life, not much more to say. It feels all so simple, and yet, surely God's work is on display. As I dream with excitement for a time to come back, for now I will smile at such beauty and just reflect. The ocean is calling as I lose all sense of time by the hour, with the sweet smell of the sea mist, the movement, the power. As I look back once more for a glance at today's past, the sun begins to soften and shadows start to cast. For I entered the ocean on this day with childlike glee, and I left as an adult, my heart overflowing and free. It was an extraordinary day, a gift, a reminder to just be. I hope to be back one day to embrace you, my friend, the sea. Boy, two very distinct poems, which is interesting when I think about the PhD journey and year 2023. Let's see, I started in 2020, so it's 3 years in. So I would be in the midst of the 67 credit course load, and it was tough. It was tough. I've been reflecting about the PhD journey, and I'm wondering, for me, was the journey about the degree? Was the journey about crossing the finish line? Or was the PhD really about the journey and what I learned on the journey? And when I read these two poems, I think about that for myself, about all the contradictions in life and the obstacles that come across your path. Sometimes daily for some people. The growth that occurs, the struggle when you're growing. Sometimes growing challenges really to step outside our comfort zone. If you take a listen to episode 21, Dr. Ward and I talked about that, about stepping outside your comfort zone and how sometimes that feels kind of uncomfortable. When I think about the second poem I wrote, I think about the episode on the gift of time, allowing myself some time in the midst of a busy day, in the midst of caring for my elderly mother, in the midst of whatever was going on that particular day, and going down to swim and give myself some freedom, some time to just let my mind wander a little bit, play. I mean, think about it. As we get older, okay? Well, let's go back to our childhoods. I always like to say to people, and listen to this, because I don't know if anybody's ever said this to you before. What did you love to do in your childhood? Right? What did you love to do in your childhood? What did you love to do it in play? And then ask yourself as an adult, are you doing those things in your adulthood? It's a simple question to help you reflect on your life. I mean, we tend to lose play as we get older. And it's so important. It allows us to have some laughter and some joy and friendships and sense of community. And if the things that you like to do in terms of playing are physically active activities, then it's good for your body. It's good for your mind. There's so many positive things about it. I think that we as adults don't get a message that says it's okay to go find some time for yourself to go play. Okay. I think we get a message of climbing that first mountain, of achieving success, of accumulating wealth, of doing things that, propel our lives forward. But we don't necessarily often get a message of, okay, why don't you go play a little bit, whatever that is for you, and find a hobby. It could be anything. It could be writing, it could be physical activity, it could be painting, it could be anything. When I think about my dissertation study, and I guess let me just kind of explain to you that this podcast is not only to talk about the things that I learned on my PhD journey, but it's also to talk about like my research and what I found and my interests in terms of exercise motivation and perspectives on successful aging. How do we age successfully? I mean, ultimately, I'm a health promotion voice, okay? My study looked at older triathletes and it explored what motivates them to be highly physically active and what were their perspectives on successful aging. The reason I bring it up and I talk about it in this episode is for a lot of my participants, being a triathlete was like playing. For them, it was fun. It was enjoyment. They had enjoyment in it. It was joyful. It was hanging out with friends. It was training with friends. It was a sense of community, the triathlon community, friends that they hadn't seen in a while, friends that they would see at races. So when I talk about these things, like my poem, The Ocean is Calling, and allowing myself some time to play, I found these things in my study that was a strong motivator for my participants in my study was sense of community, was the enjoyment and training and racing. And I guess on some level, it could be considered play. I mean, I know there's hard work that goes into training, but maybe that sense of enjoyment brings people back to feeling like they were a child. Think about it. I don't know if you swim or if you go to the pool. I actually myself just got home from the pool tonight. Um, Probably why I look a little disheveled tonight. But anyhow, when I get in the water, it's like playing. Think about it. When we were kids, we played at the pool. If you had an opportunity in your childhood to play, I know everybody's life is different. We have different challenges. If you didn't have that opportunity in your childhood, find it now in your adulthood. A lot of research, and I was studying that research to talk about this tonight, shows that play, having hobbies, allowing yourself time to let your mind relax and things that bring you joy, it helps with your cognitive health, it helps with your physical health, and it helps with your social, emotional health, which is basically relationships in your life. So, can you hear my dog drinking water in the background? Anyhow, this is unplugged. This is real. I hope that my words give you some sense of encouragement in your life. I know firsthand there's a lot of mental health struggles. People struggle with things. I think my first poem kind of demonstrates perhaps I was struggling with some depression, some anxiety, some really deep thinking. And then I think I pulled myself out of it and found some ways to play and to enjoy life. And so I guess that is what gives me the qualification perhaps to talk to you because the PhD journey, there's no perfect time to decide to go back to do something like that, to go after some goal that you have on your heart. Life doesn't stop, right? Whether you decide to get your doctorate, whether you're in, the midst of your career, whether you want to go back to school, to go to medical school, whatever it is in your life, when you train for an Ironman, When you set goals for yourself, life doesn't stop. So how do you prioritize? How do you focus? How do you achieve these goals that you have for yourself in your life? Because you do need discipline, you do need focus, you do need a sense of seriousness in achieving those goals. But I'm trying to say from my own experiences, it's just a heavy grind, if it's just a day in, day out intensity and grind, your body's going to get sick. You have to have some type of balance to let yourself relax, to find some joy, to play. I tend to be interested in how sports, in people's lives, especially as we age, how sports participation impacts quality of life. My first study was with triathletes. There are studies out there, not that many with triathletes, but there are studies out there with older masters athletes playing different sports, pickleball, golf, swimming, lots of things. Sports participation, lot of benefits to your physical health, your mental health, managing chronic illnesses such as cardiovascular diseases, everything. Here's one thing I will share with you that I learned on my PhD journey and in my research. As we get older, there is a phenomenon called ageism. And ageism says to older people, as you age, you're supposed to get slower. You're supposed to get more tired. Your muscles are going to decline. They actually physiologically change. It's called sarcopenia. But there's like this expectation, ageism is like a prejudice almost, like an expectation that things are supposed to slow down for you. And the truth is, they don't have to. We live in a period of time that we can have great health into our 70s, 80s, and 90s. I mean, if you followed what happened in Kona, the World Championship Ironman for the females, Natalie Grabeau finished age 80, a full Ironman. That's an over 2 mile swim, followed by a 112-mile bike ride, followed by a 26.2 marathon run. She did it in 16 hours, I think, in 40 some minutes. I can't remember the exact time, but she did it at age 80. She's the oldest female to have ever done it. If she did it, she's the trailblazer. It means it can be done by other people. I'm not saying everybody needs to be a triathlete. I'm just saying that we don't have to accept that aging has to be a period of decline. We can get back to what we felt in our childhood. We can play. We can find things that we enjoy doing. We can exercise. We can play sports. I know many people in their 70s who are very active on softball leagues, water skiing, just enjoying life. And that's my message. I think about the PhD journey, okay? I learned how to do hard work on it. I learned how to stay focused. I learned how to say no, to stay focused. I learned how to take on very, very heavy things in my life. And then I got sick. And I talk about in a past episode, I ended up in ER thinking I was having a heart attack, and I had a panic attack from enormous stress, enormous burnout, enormous fatigue because I did not set appropriate boundaries in my life to manage all that heavy workload. And I came out of it and I learned to balance life. And it's not always easy. There's always going to be reasons to derail you. But as one of my very dear friends shared with me in school, you have to put some time aside for your life and call it non-negotiable. And you can hear my little Jack Russell tonight. Oh, I hope that you enjoy the the genuineness of this podcast recording tonight. This is the quietest time I could find to do this today. And I hope that my message resonates with you. I hope that it is meaningful in some way. I'm not like the expert. I'm just sharing that through my experiences, I know what it feels like to suffer burnout. I know what it feels like to take on these heavy things in your life. I've haven't shared them all on this podcast, but eventually one day I will. But I have learned now that there are things in my life that are just non-negotiable, like going to the pool to get my laps in, like spending time in nature. So find those things for yourself because I want you to have the best health that you can. We're here for one life. We got one body. Truly, we have one body. So let's take care of it. Let's tune out the noise. Let's think about what we love to do. Go back to your childhood. Think about what you love to do. Where did you play? Did you love to play outside till dark? Then go find something to do where you can play outside. If you didn't have those opportunities in your childhood, go find them now in your adulthood. Okay? That's my wish for you. That's my prayer for you. I'll be back again probably midweek. We'll keep going through my poetry. We'll try to relate it to the PhD journey. And I have guests that I'm lining up. So the Laura Rossetti, who we had on the podcast, who went down to Kona, is going to come back and talk about what that was like for her. She's a wonderful role model to look at how keeping something in your life up to 70 at this point, being a triathlete, has been so meaningful to her in giving her a quality of life. And she loves it. And in a way, it's like playing, although it is hard work too. So I have that guest coming on. I also have a friend who actually is a yoga instructor, and she is involved in something called sound healing. And so I'm really looking forward to have her on the show and to learn about that. I don't know that much about it, so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. And we're just going to keep moving forward. I appreciate you listening to me. Love your feedback. Thank you for your patience as I grow on my own. And yeah, I wish everybody truly a wonderful and blessed week. Go find the things out there in the universe that you love to do. All right. Thank you. Good night.